welcome to Occasional Randomness. I'm your host, Eric Scott, and joining me, as always, is my fellow co-host, somebody who loves a good virtual reality game, Jason Johnson.
My mind to your mind, my thoughts to your thoughts. Oh wait, is that a different franchise? Did I cross the streams again?
Yeah, it's a little older franchise,
Oh,
although it's not a new one because, as we have proven on a previous podcast, they totally ripped off Farscape for Guardians of the Galaxy.
yeah, but I can't think of a mental thing in Guardians of the Galaxy that they did yet. So
Other than Mantis telling people to go sleep all the time. But,
yeah, there's that. But I was looking for the virtual reality mental training thing because evidently that has something to do with what we're supposed to talk about today, right?
I've heard, yeah. Now I'm thinking like old VR movies, like The Lawnmower Man. I don't know why that came to mind, but so there you go.
Or Tron, which is semi-relevant right now since there's a new Tron movie.
Yeah, it comes out this week as we record this, right? I think so.
Yeah.
Back to why we're here. So we are continuing our march through the final season of Farscape. This time around, we'll be doing season 4, episode 15, Mental as Anything, where we get the answers to the backstory of one of our main characters, and probably, question mark, we'll talk about that, moving the main plot along a little bit more.
Maybe.
Probably a good hint that they are for what happens in this episode, which we'll talk about when we get there. But yeah, because they only got 7 left after this. So hopefully everything they're doing at this point is moving the main plot along because they're running out of time.
So you're telling me we don't get to the end of this season, leave everything hanging, and then come out with a mini series to wrap the whole thing up?
Oh, no, that still happens. But at least we'll wrap it up a lot faster than it happened 20 years ago when it was like, okay, we'll see for 2 years, maybe.
Yeah, we don't have to do that long of a wait, so that's good.
And as always, our little public service announcement here. If you like what we do, please give us a like or a review wherever you listen to this at. Or better yet, spread the word, tell your friends, tell your neighbors, tell total strangers, whatever. We don't care. We appreciate it.
Actually, we encourage the total stranger thing. It's always good to talk to people.
Yeah. Unless you have like, hundreds of friends, in which case, you don't have time for strangers. But all right, so this is an odd numbered episode, so I'm up for the recap. Farscape, season 4, episode 15, Mental as Anything. We open with John and Aaron sitting in Pilot's den next to Pilot. He tells them that they've reached the optimum departure point, and Rygel, Scorpius, and Dargo are waiting for John on Lola. Meanwhile, he also says that Tiana, Sokozu, and Arenti are already in a transport pod. Aaron gives John his Christmas gift, finally, from weeks ago, shows ago, whatever. And it's a remote control. John looks a little bit confused and says, does something come with this? She says, yes, something big that's pretty much taking over his entire room. John tells Pilot that they'd rather stay behind and sit and watch and eat popcorn like normal people. Pilot says, unfortunately, Dargo is waiting. John tells Aaron he's got to go look after Scorpius. Aaron says she needs to go with her or should go with him. But John says, that's not possible. Just look after the girls. She says that's not funny and tells her it better be than mental arts training. I don't know. You could do with the mental discipline, she tells him. Not from somebody Scorpio recommends, John says. You got the far better job. And she says that, rummaging around a dead Leviathan settlement looking for a Moya part is not very thrilling. She'd much rather swap places with John. That reminds Aaron that now Shanna is asking where she is. So they will say Merry Christmas, kiss, and part. So the boys go off to a training camp. The trainer, Katoya, tells them their objective is mental discipline, a skill few ever achieve. He tells them of their task chairs in front of them, which provide access to a mindscape where they will compete with an opponent to the point of great pain. If they endure the pain, they'll succeed. Retreat, and they'll suffer the consequences. John says he's here to know about the creature that attacked his family and killed his friends, and Scorpius assures him that if it's from tormented space, Katoya will know about it. Scorpius says his price is completion of the course. Meanwhile, nearby, Dargo smells something that gives him some flashbacks. Rygel comments it's the stench of that felling Jared, who's also in the training class. And Dargo's like, no, I know the odor. And when you cut across the ring to a person who pulls off his hood he's wearing, and it is indeed somebody that Dargo does know. Macton, the man who killed his wife.
Dun dun
Dun, dun,
dun.
dun. Dargo goes for him. You killed my wife. You set me up, and then you sent me to prison. Macton says that Dargo did not want the truth then, and he won't now, and tells the others to let Dargo hit him like he beat Lalonde. As they jostle for the advantage, Katoya separates them.
Does that mean that Macton had 6 fingers? Kind of like the 6 finger killed his wife. Anyway, go ahead.
You killed my wife. Prepare to die.
Yeah, that's what I was picturing.
As they sit in a room outside the main chamber, John asks Dargo if he's okay. Rygel says that Macton's a liar. He can't believe the Peacekeeper has found them. He suggests that they leave immediately before any more arrive. Scorpius tells them that will not be permitted. They agree to stay. They must obey the rules. John says they won't stick around and wait for Marauder, no matter what the rules say. Scorpius reminds them, or actually tells them, because we didn't know this, that this sector of protected space is forbidden to peacekeepers without express orders from Peacekeeper High Command. So it's likely Macton is here unofficially. Dargo says that Macton destroyed his family, his wife, and his son, and deserves to die. Dargo has a flashback to a time long ago at his home where he overhears Macton telling Lalonde that Dargo is a Luxon and he can't help but hurt her. She says that they're in love and Dargo would never hurt her, nor would she ever hurt Dargo. Macton storms out. Back in the present, Katoya asks John to join him for a demonstration. John says that no thanks, he's just here to watch. Katoya reminds him that everybody must participate. John says that after everything he's had in his head, he will not offer another chunk for Katoya's gains. This is not a game, Katoya insists. But John tells Katoya to go ahead and fail him. He's not going to do it. Katoya looks at Scorpius, who agrees to be the participant. John tells Scorpius it proves nothing to him if Scorpius wins. So we get to see the first of our little mental combats. Scorpius steps into the chamber, and they're suddenly in a huge blackened room with a grid of tiny lights like a starry midnight sky on the platform. There's a glowing orange energy ball hovering around that they are pushing back and forth towards each other with their minds. Katoya tells Scorpius to overcome the pain. They push the energy ball back and forth, and Katoya reminds him not to withhold his efforts, nor is anger a substitute for clarity. The task may be completed with a minimum of harm. Katoya pushes it against Scorpius, asking if they should end this. Scorpius pushes back, almost hitting Katoya. I was just starting to enjoy the pain, he says. As Katoya retaliates, gives a final push, and it smashes against Scorpius. Afterwards, John goes to the bathroom, or to find the bathroom, where he finds Macton waiting. John asks why he's there, and Macton says he's responding to Dargo's death threats. Dargo told him he was coming for him. He says he won't allow Dargo to kill him to conceal what he did to his wife, his sister. He killed Lalonde. John says, no, I think it was you that killed her. But he tells John that Dargo killed her in a fit of Luxon hyper-rage. John says, no, Dargo did not do that, and it's good enough for him. Do you know that Luxon hyper-rage can cause blackouts, he asks, adding that any honest Luxon would tell him that. And again, insists that Dargo was the one who killed his wife. He just doesn't remember or has blocked it out. John returns to the chamber where Rygel wants to go up against the Chariot. Katoya tells him this is not a game. It's a war of wills, Rygel says. Where else will I get a chance at a fair fight where I have the advantage? Katoya allows Rygel to proceed. Meanwhile, Dargo asks what lies Macton told John. Dargo does admit to sending death threats. John says he does not want to talk about it anymore. It'll just piss off Dargo. Dargo says he's already pissed off. So John tells him about the mention of Luxon hyper-rage causing blackouts. Dargo flashes back to a moment when he went into hyper-rage in front of Lalonde because he did not want Macton in his house. Back in the arena, Dargo says that blackouts during hyper-rage do happen, but he learned to control them successfully. Young Luxons are genetically violent, and the impulses take cycles to master, which is why Luxons aren't allowed to marry young. He says Lalonde knew he would never hurt her, and he made a solemn vow that if he ever did, he would leave immediately. Back in the cold combat room there, Rygel's groaning and frothing at the mouth, expending so much energy against the Chariot. John tells Katoya Sparky there looks like he's losing a few brain cells, so maybe it's time to end this. It was his choice, Katoya says. John and Dargo approach Rygel to take him out of the ring anyway, and are both thrown backwards by an invisible force by Katoya. Rygel ultimately wins, overcomes the Chariot. He smiles triumphantly, and promptly collapses. They take him under the ring. The trains enter along with Dargo and Scorpius. Scorpius says that John is fine. He's just been moved to remedial training. Dargo is thinking about Macton, and Scorpius says that perhaps he should remain focused and heed their example. Katoya calls him up, and Scorpius reiterates the need to stay focused. Dargo flashes back again, asking Lolan if he had ever hurt her. She says that they'll get through it. If I ever did hurt you, you'd tell me, right? He asked. She says he would never hurt her and promises to tell him if he did. It's Dargo's turn in the mental chamber. He's in a room with barriers and blue energy beams as to try to find his way out. Katoya tells him to release his mind and find the path. Dargo keeps being hurt by the barriers and eventually gets so angry that Katoya stops the task, telling him to exert even a micron of self-control over his personal impulses is the whole point of this exercise. Later in another room, Dargo says he's leaving. Katoya tells him that will not help him find the answers he's looking for. Dargo gets angry again, telling Katoya he's sick of the mind games and that if he remains here, he will kill Macton. He stops his anger slowly, and Katoya tells him that proves he can control it. We cut to John, who's now locked up in a small barred cell as a cold furnace that takes up a quarter of the cage's floor space. A literal hotbox, I guess.
I was saying the story was about to heat up, but okay.
That's right. We're on fire now. He calls for Dargo, but gets no answer. Meanwhile, Rygel tells Dargo that Macton must be lying. Why? Because he's Peacekeeper. Dargo says that he and Lolan were happy together, and Macton can't change that. He says he should have killed Macton anyway. And he's like, isn't that what you set out to do when we left Moya? Rygel asks. Dargo says part of him knew that he wouldn't bring Lolan back, but the other part wanted to let him know that he knew exactly where Macton was. Rygel urges him to pay attention to the part that wants to kill Macton so he can finally get it over with and be done. Dargo says he's not so sure anymore he wants to kill or take revenge on Macton. Katoya goes to see John, but tells him to let him out. So Katoya drops a key into the room through the bars, which lands on the coals in the furnace. Katoya tells him he wasn't quick enough, that he can leave when he catches the key to let himself out. Macton and Dargo meet outside the chamber. Dargo tells Macton to stay away from him and his friends and stop spreading lies. He says Macton always hated him, and if he hated any non-Sebastian that married his sister. Macton replies that he may have come to accept the marriage in time had Dargo not started beating her. Dargo says he's violent when he chooses to be, and now he chooses not to kill Macton. But that could change. Macton said that if he came to kill Dargo, he'd never see him coming. He tells Dargo he came to give him the truth about the blackouts that Lolan stopped him from seeing. Dargo says he's lying. Now Macton taunts him further. He pushes him onto the desk. For a moment, he sees Lolan lying on the table in Macton's place and is taken aback. And Macton tells him that this is his uncontrollable rage, and he asks if he thought he could really ever protect Lolan from that. And if he looks deep within himself, he will know the truth. For in fact, he's always known. Meanwhile, back in the cell, another key is dropped down to John, which he does not catch in time. Scorpius shows up and says that Katoya told him John was experiencing setbacks. Scorpius tells him neither Earth nor John is safe. The Scarens know of him and are coming for him. He can't run away, and Scorpius says he can't protect John from them. John yells for him to get him out of this hole, but Scorpius says that this is specific Scaren training he's going through. John tells him that, yeah, he's already figured that out. It's not the heat, it's the humidity, he says mockingly. Scorpius tells him the heat mechanisms the Scarens employ is just the beginning, and if they disable his mind's defenses, there's no secret they cannot extract. John tells him that he'll take his chances on his own. Scorpius stresses that when they find John, the Scarens will extract the wormhole knowledge and then kill him. After all we had meant to each other, you'd kill me first, John pronounces. You have such limited mental capacity, John, but apparently an abundant will to prevail. Scorpius says that his advice is to use that will right here and now, as Katoya is the only one that can give him the tools he needs to survive the Scarens. And later, Scorpius is talking to Katoya. He said that he knows John will survive just like he would. Katoya says that for Scorpius to have survived this long, his training must have been helpful. Scorpius says that they've saved his life on countless occasions. And he requests 3 favors from Katoya. I owe so many? Katoya asks. Well, I did spare you from Peacekeeper captivity and my Aurora chair, Scorpius replies. Katoya says he would have survived the Aurora chair anyway. That tells Scorpius, proceed. Scorpius' first request is to intensify John's training. Without the training, he will ultimately die anyway. Second, Macton has become a dangerous distraction, and Scorpius is certain he will either kill or be killed by Dargo. Katoya says he will have neither of them here, but Scorpius asks that Katoya take some preemptive action. Finally, Scorpius asks for information on a species he has no knowledge of. The species recently attacked John. And John's still in his cage, with the coals sizzling around him and getting hotter by the minute. Dargo comes in and tries to help release him, but can't do it. so instead gives John a drink of water and tells him this is doing his head in. He's been thinking of killing Macton for half his life, but is not questioning if Lalonde lied to him. John says that Macton's just filling him with possibilities. What Lalonde did should differ Dargo, and that means something. Dargo says it means it's possible he killed the woman he loved more than his own life. Dargo again talks with Katoya, saying he has a great deal of respect for his work. He says that mental strength is just not his strength, and asks if Katoya can help him find an answer. What do you want to know? Katoya asks. What kind of monster am I really? So they enter the task chairs, where Dargo sees an image of Lalonde with a knife through her chest. Dargo says he does not want to see that, but Katoya tells him to stay focused. Lalonde says that she knows it upsets him, but he's getting worked up over nothing. Dargo says that his anger is to be controlled, not used against someone you love. Katoya asks if he used it against her. Dargo eventually lashes out and sees himself hitting her. He asks, did I hurt you? She says no, he never hurt her. He says she promised to tell him if he did, and asks if she knows how much he loved her. She says yes. When suddenly Katoya implodes into a swirling shards of glass and disappears, ripped from the task chair. And now in the task chair is Macton. Back in the cell, John's getting more and more agitated. The cell now has heating elements on all sides of the cage, not just the floor, making the heat unbearable. Back in the share room, Macton hits Dargo, and the environment morphs into the house he shared with his wife. Returning to the scene of the crime, Macton says. Dargo goes to hit Macton, but he morphs into Lalonde. Macton starts hitting Dargo and switching his image with Lalonde's to try and convince Dargo he couldn't control himself, and it was all his doing. With her appearance, but in his voice, shows Dargo huge bruises on her legs, arms, and neck. They switch to a cell on Dargo's cell on Moya, where Macton says he belongs. Dargo's chained up, and Macton starts punching him, saying that this is what he did to Lalonde, so it's no less that he deserves. Another key is thrown down into the cell, and this time, John misses it, but in other frustration, just rips the grille cover off and puts his hand into the coals and retrieves the key, enduring great pain and severely burning his hands. Dargo tells Macton he did not kill Lalonde. Macton says no, but Dargo drove her to her own death. He shows Lalonde stabbing herself, saying he beat her beyond her capacity to endure it. Macton says he doctored the scene to provide the evidence that put Dargo in prison forever. Dargo begins to go into hyper rage, and Macton starts to leave. As he starts to leave, Dargo makes himself focus and control and exit his rage. Macton turns around, and Dargo causes his chains to just fall away. You're lying. Every word you said is a lie. Macton insists no, he beat her and drove her to suicide. Dargo knocks him to the ground and says he knows what Lalonde went through for their love, and he wishes he could have loved her half as much. Oh, you loved her to death, Macton croaks. You don't have this power, Dargo says. Lalonde taught him that he does have the power to take over his rage. Even though Macton now expects Dargo to strike him with a killing blow, Dargo says he has no intention of killing him. He says he loved his wife, but Macton would not know that because he did not even know Lalonde. But Dargo knew her. He says she could never have left him for his failings, and maybe she should have, but he knows that she would never, ever have left their son without a mother. Therefore, she would never have taken her own life. That's why he's certain all he says are lies. Dargo turns the table on Macton and wants to see Macton's memories and why he killed Lalonde. He has a vision of Macton telling Lalonde of what he plans to do to Dargo, turning him in so he'll be dishonorably discharged and put away. She pleads that he's done nothing wrong, and as Macton walks away, she says she won't let him do it. She grabs a knife and goes to strike him, but he grabs her and stabs her in self-defense. Macton tells Dargo it was all his fault, though. She attacked him, and his peacekeeper training took control. And by the time he was aware of what he had done, it was too late. Dargo says that's not the whole truth, since she was clearly beaten. Macton says he had to make Dargo pay and made it look like he did in a fit of hyper rage, so he beat Lalonde after she died. Dargo walks away disgusted, leaving a guilt-ridden Macton to relive what he did. On Lola, Dargo, Rygel, Scorpius, and John are leaving the camp. John's nursing his wounded hands and asks Dargo if he's all right. Dargo says he's fine. If you were fine, you'd have killed Macton instead of leaving him there. Dargo says that he's trapped in a coma with his own nightmares. Killing him would have been merciful, and he's just not that enlightened. Scorpius asks John if he's able to obtain the key, but John whistles and doesn't answer. Scorpius tells him that the creature that attacked him was called a Spreeth. A species can communicate over long distances telepathically, quite possibly passing on the information regarding Earth. John asks who he'd pass it on to. Scorpius says Greza, almost certainly. John comments that the peacekeepers now know where Earth is. May know, Scorpius corrects him. John asks if Greza will go there, and Scorpius says it's possible, but she doesn't really want Earth. She wants John first. John asks again if Dargo's okay, and he says he will be, but he's got things on his mind. Things he's done and things he can't take back. The end. All right, some trivia about this episode. Except for Aaron, none of the female crew members appear in this episode. Likewise, this is the only episode in season 4 in which Sikozu does not appear.
Interesting.
The opening scene with John and Aaron was added later to explain why only the guys were featured in the episode, as well as to introduce TP Set. Okay, well, now we know what John's present is. Dave Elsie wanted to have Katoya wear a special contact lens, but John Brumpton was suffering an eye infection, and the unit nurse prevented them from using the lenses. The episode title comes from an Australian new wave band of the same name, whose lead singer designed the Mambo shirts regularly worn by Ricky Manning, a writer and producer of Farscape. And the set of lights and CG area of the set caused issues for some of the actors, making them feel sick when they turned their heads as the lights seemed to move. Which kind of did the same thing for me too sometimes. So I can see where they're going with that. So, and that was only for like a couple of seconds for us versus like, hours on set for them. So yeah, I feel for them. All right. So that was an interesting story. It looks like it wrapped up one of the crew's backstories in our final season here. What do you think?
So, as I think I've said on a couple of other episodes, I honestly wasn't sure in the beginning of this one, but this is one where it grew on me as it went. The more we kind of got into the backstory and it became more about Dargo, I kind of shifted. The resolution, I guess I'll say that getting the truth, and we'll step into this as we go about the truth about what happened with his wife and all that. The polyhedral fight was weird. The kind of the opening, throwing the dice back and forth and burning each other, could have used more explanation, especially since later on you had the different scenarios like the dodge the laser wire thing that Dargo went through, or actually reliving the memories that kind of expanded the options. So I liked it better when they kind of got past, let's throw a piece of dice at each other. What about you?
I mean, like you, I liked it. It kind of grew on me, but it was, confusing to your point, but it was a little differently confusing for me though, because the way they keep phrasing or how they kept saying certain things here and there, like Macton and Dargo, it's like, how did Macton know Dargo would be there? Was it just pure coincidence? Yeah, he says he was there responding to Dargo's death threats. So I wasn't sure. Did Dargo tell him that he would be at Katoya's like at this time? And if he did, we don't know when Scorpius came up with this idea and how he managed to convince everybody to go along with it, or how long it took them to even get there. So yeah, that whole thing I just didn't quite get. But that really didn't stop my enjoyment of the episode once I got past that and the occasional different mental battle concepts, whatever. But I did like the mental combat chamber. I thought it was a cool idea, and the little lights in the ceiling and walls that the design people came up with was pretty cool. And yeah, I can, like I said, I can see why some of the actors had motion sickness or vertigo or whatever. But it was a really cool set. And then let's see. I also like the opening scene with John and Aaron. John, both of them finally acting normal towards each other. She gave him the Christmas present. She got back on Earth. However long ago that was now, a couple weeks, a couple months, who knows, right? They don't tell you how long things are between things. But,
No, they seem to enjoy telling each other Merry Christmas. Like it was a joke that it was so long. So I think it was supposed to be a while, but they don't actually tell us. So you're right.
and Moya is big enough where you can hide the present, and John's probably to find it, right? So okay, fine, whatever. And I guess they're concerned about Scorpius listening into their comms while they're in Pilot's Den. Maybe that's because Scorpius is with the others on Lola, which means he can't listen in on people. Or
Yeah,
because they're in Pilot's Den, they don't need comms because they're right there with Pilot. I don't know. And Pilot, they keep telling Pilot to tell other people things. So he's like their relay system, right?
yeah. I think it's assumed that in Pilot's Den, only Pilot has a bit access to comms, so that he has some privacy, right? Because he can't just like leave and go somewhere else. So I'm guessing he controls the comms in his room. But yeah, again, they don't really dig too deep. It's just more of a matter of it's a spot they can talk.
Then yeah, we'll kind of go through the plot lines here. A couple of them. We'll leave the main ones, John Dargo, for the end here. We'll just talk about Rygel here real quick. He gets a good couple scenes in this episode. He gets to eventually fight Jared, which, as we learned from like the multi-parter where Twin Crichton bites the dust, that's one of the race that killed almost 1 billion Hynerians. And just about looks like he's beaten. He manages to defeat the Jared, but collapses, which apparently only temporary. As like the next scene, he's fine. So, but it does kind of help underscore the danger of what they're doing. That it's mental training. It's a lot of pain. That Katoria said. Our little buddy's got strong willpower when he wants to use it.
Well, yeah, especially when it's revenge or greed based, right?
Yeah.
It was nice to have or food. Oh yeah, I can't forget the food. It was nice to have a little focus on Rygel at the start, but since he kind of goes out of commission after it, it's almost like it was a way to send him off with the guys. Probably, as we'll get to later for a future story, and not involving any guys. But yeah, it almost would have made more sense for him to stay behind otherwise, because they kind of like have that bit of action for him, and then although kind of to the same point as how the brother-in-law gets there, how does a chariot happen to randomly end up in this thing? Was it like all set up to cause mental strain? But either way, they get him out of the way pretty quick and we move on, but he does get a little bit in the story, which is nice. So.
Yeah, because aside from our crew and Macton and this chariot guy, there are other people there that I guess don't have any lines or scenes that they're never seen again. But so maybe it's just the hodgepodge of people who want to know mental combat. I don't know. And yeah, I love the scenes with Scorpius and Katoya. Kind of as hinted at or told directly, it seems like Scorpius was there many seconds ago for training, because Katoya mentioned something about he didn't quite learn enough to survive without his cooling suit. So it's kind of interesting. But Scorpius did learn enough that it's saved his life on countless occasions, he says. And apparently, Scorpius has kept Katoya's business or himself, whatever, away from Peacekeeper knowledge, as he kept him from being captive by the Peacekeepers and kept him away from his Aurora chair, which Katoya just kind of smugly says he would have survived anyway. And that kind of got me thinking that the Aurora chair concept and the mental combat chairs seem similar, like in design and kind of what they do to a degree, right? So I'm wondering, did Scorpius maybe take that idea away from his original sessions with Katoya and modify it for his own use and created the Aurora chair from that?
Maybe because I think that's a very interesting idea that I didn't think of at all. But as you say it's kind of like the similarities there, with the mention of he would have survived it, right? Katoya seems comfortable with the technology, like it didn't scare him at all. So if you take somebody's idea and change it, it's still the technology that they initiated. So I could see that being the case. And which brings to the point, it would have been interesting also to have a little more backstory on or information on the backstory between the two of these, right? Like, why did Scorpius bring him here, and what did he learn that saved his life in the past several times? All the fun stuff that we don't get to see yet.
Like maybe how to like reconcile his Scaran and summation sides, or have his, I think we saw in some other episode, maybe last episode, where he was succumbing to his submations, to his Scaran side, like maybe how to keep that side at bay, right? Maybe.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, it would be nice to see some flashbacks with that, but I guess we're gonna have enough flashbacks with Dargo. So like, why have like two separate flashbacks or two different people to confuse the audience? We'll never know, because apparently, I'm guessing Katoya is dead because Macton attacked him in the chair, right? So maybe this whole thing's now done. I don't know, but we ain't gonna see him again, and who knows? Okay, so enough of the supporting cast. Let's get to their two main guys here. So yeah, John wants no part of the mental combat. He says he had enough people going through his mind, and he's kind of done with that. But apparently, it sounds like, or they figured out that John would do that. So Scorpion and Katoya have some other scheme to test John differently. So they dump John down a metal grilled cell on all sides and start heating him up. And all he's got to do is just either catch the key that he doesn't ever see coming, or drag, take it out of the burning hot coal pit to get out. No problem. And then Scorpion admits that he's being given specific training to resist scare and torture that they'll use, which John says, like, yeah, no kidding. So I'm guessing since they hung the proverbial lantern on these scenes, that I'm sure it must come into play at some point in the remaining 7 episodes of the season that he'll be mentally tortured by Scarens, right?
More than likely, and I think Scarens have a heat thing, right? Like that's one of their
Mhm.
big genetic, I don't know, powers or traits or whatever. That's why Scorpius has to have the cooling rods to control his overheating or whatever. So I'm sure, like you say, that'll come back. I do want to point out here. I watched this episode in the living room with my wife, and she commented, she's like, "Why didn't he just take off his jacket and catch the key with the jacket?" I was like,
Good point.
uh, yeah, maybe heat delirium. I don't know. I got nothing. So,
Or use his jacket to take the key out without burning his hands as much as he did.
right,
Which, I
yeah,
mean, granted, the jacket probably would caught on fire, but I mean, just do it real quick, pull the key out, and then, I don't know, hopefully it doesn't fall back in. So we'll just blame it on the heat and humidity.
yeah. Always good to blame it on something like that.
Yeah, yeah. And then, the real focal point, I guess the main A plot of this story is Dargo and Macton and what really happened to Dargo's wife, Lolan, and ultimately who was right, who really killed her, right? Did Dargo beat her and she ultimately in a hyper rage, or did Macton kill her? Which we'll discuss here in a little bit. But I did like how they interspersed the flashbacks as Dargo and Macton kept talking, right? Thought they were well done, they were edited well, and I kind of like Dargo's whole change of heart as he progressed through this. Yeah, first, obviously, he wants to kill Macton. Basically, he assaulted him immediately in the opening part of the show, and like halfway through that, admits that yeah, he doesn't really want to do that anymore. Even with Macton like constantly needling him about the whole thing, he's still like, yeah, I just don't know if I want to kill you anymore, right? So, kind of always nice to see your typical rage monster character, playing against type and showing that they can learn to control their impulses. So, yeah, Dargo's, maturing as a character.
And like you said, it's always interesting to see that, and it's his way of showing that he was always more in control than he even thought he was, right? Because even at the kind of beginning of this episode, despite what he had to learn going through it and what we get to learn through that, he already had kind of moved on from the wanting to kill him. He says at the beginning, "I don't know if I want to anymore." And now, by the time we get to the end, it's a more sinister. I don't know. Sinister is probably not the right word, but it keeps him. It prevents him from Macton from having the easy way out, right? Because once he comes to grips with what really happened, he leaves him suffering, which in the long term probably is harder than an easy death.
Yeah. Although ultimately, I guess, is it more satisfying to Dargo? It's like, yeah, you can kill him at that quick rush of like, ha, finally. But then it's like, no, I'm going to not leave you in permanent torture for how many years, right? So it's like, which is better, right? Is Dargo more happy that he did that, or if he would have killed him, right? So,
Exactly. Exactly.
I guess the big question we're meant to wonder about in this little bit here is, did Dargo ever hit Lolan? Because they kind of you can't have it go either way, right? And I'm thinking no, he didn't. Although I was first wondering that if he did hit her, would she have told him? Because I think the first time they had the scene of him saying, "If I hit you, you would tell me, right?" And she doesn't really come out right directly and say, "Yes, I will tell you." She kind of deflects it, right? She kind of says a different, like she kind of twists the words a different way of maybe almost s- implying that she would forget meant to tell him, but like, would she? But then if he did actually hit her, I think he would have noticed that, right? I mean, despite the advanced technologies of medicine and whatever, it's probably kind of hard for someone like his size and her stature to like hide something like that.
Yeah, I think I agree with that, and I think it just kind of shows how Macton was getting in Dargo's head, causing him to doubt himself. Plus the whole story and all the prison time and all that kind of stuff. Because I think it was Macton just kind of covering his tracks. Because if he can convince everybody, including Dargo, that he was beating her, then it makes his story that much more likely.
And then she told him that he's got the power to control his rages, and I mean, really, it's been 3.5, 3 and 2/3 of the season, and we really haven't seen Dargo flip out in the hyper rage all that much. Granted, it's however many years, 20 cycles later or something like that. So he may have learned stuff, yeah, ahead of later. But what we've seen, he's not like the rage monster that Macton thinks he is. So yeah, all this lies by Macton.
Yep.
And then, of course, as he realizes he's not quite working the way he wanted it to work, Macton kind of switches stories, right? So it's like at the end, he's like, well, yeah, you didn't kill her directly. You know, really, she killed herself because she couldn't stand being beat anymore. And I just framed you for her death, right? Although, and then Dargo does go into hyper rage at that point, yeah, but then controls himself and gets out of it, showing again that he's got control. But yeah, he's like, no, you don't know her. I knew her. I knew your sister. Right? You know, I loved her. She loved me, and especially she loved our son, which is Macton's never around. He didn't know that fully, right? So he's like, no, she would never leave. She might leave him, but she would never leave Jotham without another. So she would never kill herself. So, I proved her false thesis.
Exactly, and it was a great way to show that, since Dargo knew his wife better than her brother did, that's why the story should never have held up. And I wonder if Dargo had been able to argue it out front. We don't really know. I don't remember if we do the immediate aftermath of the accusation, or if they just immediately said, "Oh, Lux and the peacekeepers took him."
Yeah, I can't remember some of the other shows if how they got him into captivity. But yeah, was it immediately? It was a whatever. Yeah, but yeah.
Obviously, we know where we meet him, which was on a peacekeeper prison transport. So
Yeah, where he was there
it
for
went
like
badly at some
cycles.
point.
Yeah, so and yeah, then we finally learned the truth that she tried to stop Macton from plotting to turn Dargo in and getting him jailed. But yeah, not really a good idea to try to stab a peacekeeper in the back, since combat training takes over and he kills her. But then he's like, okay, I will now use this to frame Dargo, but I need to first beat the crap out of my dead sister to make it look like he killed her. What a totally class act.
Yeah, that that was the part of the episode that got me, and whether it made Dargo feel better or not, that was the part that I'm like, he's a better person than me, because that would have been probably the end of the conversation at that point. So I wouldn't have walked away.
Yeah. Yeah, like in any 80s movie, right? Then they've been like, now I get to do to you what you get to her, and right. So
Exactly. Yep,
although,
that'd have been it.
yeah, although like we kind of said, in the end, Dargo tells John that Macton is better off in a coma, reliving what he did over and over again to his sister, as killing him with a merciful, and he's not that enlightened, which I actually laughed at. Which I mean, for this entire episode, which is very very serious, it was nice to have like a funny line at the end to kind of maybe take some of the gravity away from from the episode, right? And then Scorpius, gets a more wrap up here. So Scorpius tells John that it was a screef and what it is, and almost certainly who sent it, which was of course crazy, which we all knew that. But yeah, she doesn't really want Earth, not yet. She wants John. Yeah, no kidding, because why do Earth? Why care about Earth? They don't know anything about wormholes. This John guy does. I need him, right? So that just kind of sets up what's to come for the rest of the season here.
Yeah, and overall, I felt this was a very serious episode of the show. Right? I mean, we've covered serious topics off and on, and I mean, I think our last one dealt a lot with slavery, although it wound up not really being. Anyway, we won't revisit that one. But this episode had almost none of the normal levity that I think we are used to in Farscape. That kind of caught my attention. And I was done watching. I was like, this was a pretty serious one from start to finish, except for like the initial opening sequence to kind of set up the where the girls are with Aaron.
Because even some of John's normal kind of snide or just sarcastic comments about hey, Master Jedi, let's pull Rygel out. It wasn't funny. Like it wasn't. I guess because of the seriousness of what was happening, right? It wasn't just like the back and forth with the crew. It was like everything was pretty serious topics. So it's like joking is just didn't fit it, right? There's no place for it.
Exactly.
Yeah. So anything else to mention? I know we kind of covered all the major points and all the side points, I guess.
Yeah, I think we walked through this one. I like I said, I would overall. I don't know where to rank this one if I had to try to. It wasn't that I disliked the episode. It's just I kind of missed some of the fun tone. But I think we got a lot of backstory on Dargo, which we liked. So that's kind of cool. But yeah, but we'll see what we get next, right?
I mean, next episode might be the funny one. We'll see. Which, speaking of which, next time that will be season 4, episode 16, bringing home the bacon. Like a guessing game of what do we think that might mean. Well, the first thing I think of whenever I hear that line, for whatever reason, is from an old commercial from the 70s that was selling perfume, where the woman sings that she can bring home the bacon, fried up in a pan, that kind of thing. That commercial. I don't remember what the product was, but I remember her singing about that. So, and of course,
That's
that phrase also means to earn a living or earning money. We had our guy centered episode here, and in the prologue, again, they hung the lantern on Aaron going with the girls to some dead Leviathan settlement to get a part for Moya. So, pretty much 100% sure that that's where we're going next time. They pretty much made that totally clear. And given how things usually work with TV shows, otherwise it'd be very boring. It's probably not gonna be that easy to get that part, and hijinks will ensue. So that's where I think we're going.
yeah. Which I tell you, I guess I was off my game today because I didn't think about that. But now that you say it, I'm going to go with that too because that seems obvious. We've had an episode with a bunch of the characters missing. Interestingly, like you said, I do want to make a call back to the fact that this is the only episode in season 4 that Sikozu's not in. So
That's what the trivia said, yeah.
So that means we definitely get her next time. So why not make it the rest of the crew and what they were up to as we revisit? So yeah, I'll go with you. The girls have to keep up with keeping everything working and do the actual hard work while the guys were off having fun at Jedi camp. So
Yeah. You get to go to camp and have fun when you get to go shop, or it's a not stereotypical at all of it. Anyway, any of
I
these two
was
things.
about to say, wow, did we just have some stereotypes in this show or what?
Yeah, so who knows? Maybe at the end of next episode, they'll kind of both say like, how they had it better than they did, or something, or you had more fun than we did, or I don't know, whatever. We'll see. Or they would never even talk about it again. I don't know. We'll find out. So yeah, so that is your homework for next time. The Girl Power Girl Centered episode 16, bringing home the bacon. So watch that, and we'll talk about it next time. Goodbye.
Goodbye.